The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Genova, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Genova.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm here today with a fan favorite, the Monroe County Sheriff, Todd Baxter. I think for the third time, right, Todd?
Third time. I've never been called fan favorite. I love that.
Well, you are a fan favorite. Well, not everybody's your fan because
I'm a cop.
Because yeah, some of them are behind bars,
right.
Maybe Although, you know what? Somebody told me once that it might have even been you, the person that you turn around when they're young and they end up on the straight and narrow. They actually come back and thank you.
They do. I've received letters. From a mom who's in Missouri, and her daughter, I remember, as a little girl living on Lake Avenue, and I arrested mom a few times and some other people around her, but they sent me a picture of her beautiful daughter now as a young adult and how successful, and she was just saying thank you for at least showing some empathy and compassion while you did your job. Well,
sometimes somebody needs to be, turned around in the right direction. I have this expression. I say that a ship leaving port in New York, if it has a little bit of a change in bearing, just a degree or two, when it gets across the ocean, it has a significant difference. So you can affect somebody when they're young, I would imagine, and some of the people you got to know, and some people you never know about.
Yeah, you never know. You never know the other. Just do your thing, your sphere of influence. Stephen Covey calls it, right? Work within your sphere of influence.
Yeah. So the last time we talked was months and months ago. So everything's good now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks for asking. Thanks for asking. Crime's down, I'm told.
Yeah, crime's down. It's not quite the big dumpster fire.
It's a smaller dumpster fire.
It's a smaller dumpster fire. Yeah, a smaller dumpster fire than it used to be. But taking credit for. Well, I don't know. What's the analogy?
The analogy, a profound person helped me come up with this thing by the name of Dom Genova. I'm not too sure, but we were talking off the air. It was like, we're taking credit for crime, shootings in Rochester being down, or stolen vehicles, number of stolen vehicles, being down compared to last year, which was a catastrophe. And the analogy that you coined was, it's a 737 with 135 passengers last year, and now it's just a Piper Cub, but with 25 people on it. So it's a success. I don't know if we want to. We got a problem. We got a problem with the operator. We got a problem with the airplane. Something's wrong here. Let's not just sit back and go, well, it's less people dead.
Yeah, our disaster is not as big a disaster. Right. It's never really a good sales.
Well, it is a sales pitch. And again, from the standpoint of maybe someone that's I don't know, a politician, I guess. But when you have to pick up the bodies, when you're out there after an airplane crash and your people are picking up the bodies, they are fatigued. At 125, they're still fatigued and they're mentally drained and they're wondering what the hell's going on. Now it's just 25. That's not how they look at it. They look at it like, I can't believe I got to pick up more bodies.
Well, what it speaks to is a systemic problem, and you put it accurately just before. There's either a problem with the plane or there's a problem with the people operating.
The pilot, right?
Yeah.
Which two? But let's at least be honest that there's a problem and start going through a problem-solving mode as opposed to just celebrating that it's a smaller airplane this time.
Well, and placing blame. I mean, I think that's the other thing that's a dynamic in this whole thing. You got the politics, and people are placing blame, and it's you. And somebody's got to make a clear and untrammeled view of what the problem is, and then work on it. But I mean, that's one of the reasons why not a lot of people like to do your job.
Yeah, and we were speaking off the air about Bob Duffy, Chamber of Commerce. I just presented yesterday. Sandra Doley was there. There was Malik Evans was there. Adam Bello was there, and we were presenting on it, And clearly, we all have a function. Right? I mentioned Stephen Covey earlier. Sphere of influence. Prevention is so important. Poverty, right? Structural issues, educational issues, schools, districts. That's the name of the game. That's the most important. Prevent the next. But at the meantime, there's always going to be people in our community who commit crimes, violent crimes. How do we address them with enforcement? It's got to have some teeth. It's got to have consequences, or else no one's going to follow the laws that are not going to follow the laws in the first place. If there's no carrot and stick, no one's going to go to a treatment court. No one's going to leave jail and not recidivize if there's not a stick at the other end of it, right? Some people in the community are like that. And then there's the recovery. How do we help people that are addicted? How do we help people that are in the criminal justice system not to come out and recommit crimes, or not to commit crime because they're addicted and they have to feed their addiction through criminality? It's so simple. But unfortunately, nowadays we have politicians that just want to dig in their foxhole, bury their head in the sand and say, things are getting better. Things are getting better. Well, where were you when things were getting worse? If you're responsible for things getting better, you got to be helping with things that were worse, right?
Well, it's a semantic problem. I mean, what is better? I mean, that's what it boils down to. Is it fixed? Is it acceptable? I guess would be the thing. Is it acceptable?
Dom, you nailed it. It's never going to be acceptable in my world when one of my police officers has to wrestle a gun away from a young kid, jeopardize all their physical safety and also their career. They shoot a 13, 14-year-old kid with a gun, right? And it's even a gray area shooting, although justified by New York state law. They're destroyed for the rest of their life. CNN's going to run stories on these folks, right? Their house is going to be protest. These are what the deputies are thinking about. And then we release that person with no intervention. And this is not fallacy. This is real. Then they're arresting the same kid a few months later with a gun. With a gun. They're scratching their head going, what the hell am I doing here? What's the purpose?
Well, I heard these stories, and tell me if it was just urban legend or whatever, about kids getting rearrested for vehicle theft over and over again. I mean, numbers of, what? 8, 9 times? Not exaggeration. Well, talk to me about that.
So if you look on social media sites and you follow the Kia Boys, right? That's the current. And again, it's not so much.
They have a name?
They have a name, the Kia Boys, right? And then what they post is how many Kia placards they got off motor vehicles that they've stolen in the last
scalps.
week. Yeah. Thank you. I never thought of that analogy, but they're hanging them up and they're showing on Facebook or on social media sites. I got 7, I got 8, I got 9. They're not stealing your car to go out and commit crimes. They're destroying your life the next morning, right? You got to go through insurance claims. You got no transportation for your kids to go to school. Mom's got to go to the doctor. You got to recover your vehicle out of the impound. You got to get all the insurance to get the vehicle fixed. It's a nightmare for someone to have their stolen vehicle. 3,000 this year only in Monroe County. But you're not thinking about, these kids aren't even doing it to commit a crime. Those are the old days, or the hack the car up and sell it for parts. No, they're doing it just for fun because they can.
They're doing it for the badge.
They're doing it for fun. The badge of the Kia plate.
The badge of the Kia plate. They're doing.
And there's nothing to tap them on the head. You and I would have feared the hell out of our parents, right? Let alone, I remember Jesse Easton, police officer on Odie Street. I wasn't even a criminal, but I grew up in the city of Rochester. He said this term to me, I don't know how many times. You want to go downtown? I wasn't even a punk. Right. You want to go? No one wanted to go downtown. Downtown was jail. Yeah. We feared the words downtown.
Yeah, so in some really strange ways, it's a badge of honor to have one of these. Oh my!
The Lord. Placards, just steal, right? Just steal. Remember the old hood ornaments on the?
Oh yeah,
yeah. How many hood ornaments can you get?
Oh my Lord! So I mean, is that getting any better? You have some system now where you bring the kids in, and at least they have an appearance ticket the next day, as opposed to like weeks from now or something.
So that's the JEDS program, and that's an expedited appearance ticket. And believe it or not, under this system, we found out we're doing workarounds. We're trying to use New York state law. I can't violate New York state law, but we're trying to work around it or work within the confines of these laws. And we found this JEDS program, this expedited appearance ticket. We can get kids detained if we charge them with a misdemeanor. When we charge them with a felony, we can't detain them.
Why?
So we're even undercharged. That's New York state law. It's the craziness of this law. So we're actually contemplating sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning, do we undercharge them? At least we can detain them, as opposed to overcharge him, the charge he deserves, a felony, and then we got to give him an appearance ticket under New York state law. This is how convoluted these laws are. People don't understand it. So although the JEDS program is awesome because we can get the misdemeanor charge and get them detained and get them the treatment and get them intervention in their life immediately, we're skipping on the felony charge to do that sometimes. That's how convoluted law comes out of Albany sometimes.
I cannot wrap my head around this.
People don't understand it,
which is really good because we're heading into a break, and I can contemplate. This during the break. Go
get an Advil Warren break
during the break, and I'll try to figure it out in the meantime because I don't understand any of this. Thank you. Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable Radio Show, and I'm here with Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter, and we were talking about this idea. It's sort of like Alice in Wonderland, where up is down and down is up, and you can hold somebody if you charge them with a misdemeanor, but you can't hold them if you charge them with a felony, and a felony is more serious than a misdemeanor, and I can't understand this, so maybe you can explain this to me one more time.
I can't. Because the flow chart, we have a flow chart of what to do with a juvenile when we arrest them.
We have another 45 minutes of show here.
I know. So
I can't.
Sorry, it was that simple. Because it's not, you can't comprehend it, right? So Raise the Age comes out. First of all, when you take all the 16, 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds out of the Monroe County Jail or any other jail, which may be for a good reason. I'm not arguing with the reforms, just how they're designed and implemented out of emotions as opposed to thinking through them, right? And talking to the end user. Here's an example. So we take all these folks out of the jail. We can't put 16, 17-year-olds and 18-year-olds in the Monroe County Jail anymore. We're going to put them in a children's detention center. Well, the children's detention center, it's not even built yet. It's not the right size. There's not enough rooms for it, right? But we open up the doors and say, start sending all your juveniles there. That's one problem, putting the cart before the horse. The other problem is very clearly, what do we do with someone that's 16, 17 that refuses to comply with our laws? What do we do with them? If there's not a way to detain them, what do we do with them? Because they're young adolescent kids. They're not, the neurons aren't connecting. We know that, right?
Right.
And something's going wrong in their family because they're out at 2:30 in the morning in a stolen vehicle. And God bless the mom. She might be scared to death. She might be dying for help, right? But she can't control this kid because they're in a stolen vehicle at 2:30 in the morning. Mom hasn't filed a missing persons report yet. So something's gone wrong in the dynamics of the family because why aren't you screaming for help if your kid's missing? All these things are gone wrong. And then we have the 2:30 apprehension of a 16-year-old in a stolen vehicle. We are trying to find every way we can to detain this kid because we know it's for his own safety. It's what mom's begging us for. Keep him. I can't control him. These are literal conversations we're having with mom sometimes at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. Mm-hmm. You keep him. I can't control him. At least I know he's safe. You got him. And if we can't. So we designed workarounds in New York state law. How do we use the confines of the law and detain people? And believe it or not, we found when we're a 16-year-old committed a misdemeanor, we can detain them at the Children's Detention Center, but a felony, we can't. Don't ask me to explain it. It'll take an hour and a half to explain the convolution of this law. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's so convoluted. It's that confusing. So we've been spending years finding loopholes, I guess you'd say, finding ways.
Workarounds, right.
Workarounds,
yeah.
To use the laws that we have on the books right now and make sure we're at least, and think about that, Don, we're detaining this kid for his own safety. Sometimes we're detaining him because mom's begging us to. That's real world stuff. And our laws are not supporting on this. And that's the point I get frustrated with, that our lawmakers will not sit down with us and talk to us and ask us, what do we need to meet the tenets of all the reforms and also keep people safer, including the people committing the crimes?
Well, the concept that I get from this is that there may be some reason for this person's behavior, which is systemic. It
Right.
has to do with past behavior, with your environment and whatever. However, there is no holding them responsible for consequences of their behavior. So you have to do both. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
you have to figure out why there was a systemic problem.
100%.
Okay, But that's a generational thing. I mean, you're not going to get that fixed.
Right.
I see you smiling,
Yeah.
so you're agreeing with me, right?
1,000%, yeah.
Yeah. That's a systemic thing that's going to take generations to fix, if not.
And we should.
And you should.
We should.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
But that's the prevention thing I mentioned earlier, right? What about enforcement for people of today that refuse to comply with our laws, that went through those other systems? If we keep on hugging them or giving them appearance tickets and releasing them, they're still not going to go back to the old way we want it, that we should have fixed all those structural issues years ago. They can't, right? Today they're committing crimes because of some reason, but they're committing crimes. They're victimizing people. We still got to address them.
Right. There's got to be some type of balance between, I understand that you grew up in this environment and that's been a very heavy burden on you, and you shot somebody, you need to go to jail.
You're carrying a gun for the third time in Monroe County, New York, Rochester, right? You're carrying. We've had people bond out of my jail for $50,000 on a third gun charge in one calendar year.
Wow.
Right? Mm-hmm. You cannot tell me that person's not dangerous. Carrying 3 illegal guns in a year in Rochester, New York, where we have a pandemic of gun violence. He should not get out for $1 million.
Well,
money should not be part of this conversation.
Well, there was some talk about the judges being given more discretion to hold people that are violent. Has that happened, or are they just talking about that?
No. And I supported the governor when she came out in her budget this year, and she said, I want to remove the term least restrictive means. I supported her. We have a consortium for community safety. It's a large group of people that get together, very diverse group that gets together and works on public safety issues here in Monroe County and pushes those forward to our legislators. And I talked to them. I said, we should support the governor on removing least restrictive means, because at least it's getting a man on base. I've been trying to hit a home run with public safety, right? So at least we got a man on base. But Dom, really, that's about 10% of what we need. It was a step in the right direction. It was a bold move politically for her, I would say. But it's not supported enough. We still got judges doing what the hell they want to do. But also the law is confusing. I explained the whole law with the juveniles. Take it to the adult world of crime. We need clear, plain as day language. Look, if you're a repeat offender, you refuse to comply with our laws and our norms and our values, or you're dangerous, you carry a gun twice in Rochester, New York, you should be detained for at least the amount of time that people intervene in your life and determine you're safe enough to come back in our community before conviction.
Well, it's got to be frustrating for you. Somebody else in law enforcement, I won't say who, was on the show a while back, and the person was saying a lot of times we know who's doing this, but you can't do anything about it.
Yeah. It's not thousands of people. It's a few hundred.
Yeah.
And a few hundred.
And you pretty much know who they are.
And today, as of today, the taping of the show, 38 people are in the Monroe County Jail detained on federal gun charges because we can't detain them on New York State gun charges. So we went to the federal, we went to our ATF partners upon apprehension. That's a cop risking everything, foot chases, car chases, guns flying, pointing guns at each. And they make the apprehension. And then we call our federal partners at 3:00 in the morning and say, would you put federal charges? Because we can detain them on federal charges.
Federal gun charges.
Federal. We got 38 in Monroe County Jail today on federal gun charges that would have been walking our streets and getting more guns.
Any of them named Hunter Biden?
Hello, is this on? Hello, is this on?
I'm sorry.
Hello.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist.
Oh, there was a setup. And the best part is how you set me up. That was beautiful.
Oh my Lord! So what is a federal gun charge as opposed? I mean, are other New York State gun charges? Obviously, if you have a pistol, no permit. I mean, there's a state charge, right?
Equivalent gun charges called criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree in New York State penal law. And if you're carrying let's say a pistol without a New York State pistol permit, right? You could be charged with this felony charge. Well, right now they're getting released.
Yeah.
Over and over. So what we've done is try to fill that gap within the confines of the law as we go to our federal partners. So if you're carrying that exact same gun, but you have a prior felony conviction, you have a drug history, or you have a warrant for your arrest, now we can possibly detain you as a federal detainee under New York State law. No, under federal law, yes. Yep.
Well, at that, we are about ready to head into a news break. I'm sorry I did that to you.
Hook, line, and sinker, I think is this.
It was just, I'm sorry. It was just.
I got to get this treble hook out of my lip.
It was too, Hunter Biden.
I didn't see it coming.
It was too easy. It just was. And we'll talk more about these things after the news.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We're here with our esteemed sheriff of Monroe County, Todd Baxter.
I just like the esteemed part. I don't know why. It's
esteemed.
I'm called a lot of things, but that's esteemed, a new one.
Yes. I don't have pronouns, but Nita does have adjectives for me.
Does she? Yeah. I'm very good at that.
Yeah, very good. Very good. So between the break, you got a call, and I didn't hear exactly what it was about, but the word was swatting. I think a lot of people, including me, really don't know what swatting is. What is swatting?
So swatting is, you think of a SWAT team coming to your house and storming it with the guns and armored personnel vehicles and things like that. So what young people, and now adults, as I was talking on the phone here, they use it as a way to, obviously bust chops, if you will, call in a swatting call to your friend's house and, I'm barricaded in my house and they're holding me hostage, and all of a sudden 30, 40 police officers show up with lights and sirens on. That's swatting, if you will. But now what we're seeing is threats with it. We're seeing like atrocious pictures coming across the internet or to your email system or maybe pictures have been dubbed to your family members or things like that. So it's a form of intimidation or a form of harassment. And it was initially designed to make law enforcement look foolish too, because we showed up to this no nonsense call, right? With a SWAT team that didn't need to be there.
So some of this is actual physical, where your SWAT team shows up at this location. Some of it is like virtual. Is that?
Yeah, no. So the idea of why it was called swatting is because, it'd be, I'm in the school, I'm hiding in the school, and there's a gunman shooting up our school, and all of a sudden a SWAT team shows up, right, to rescue the school from an active shooter. Now it's because we've gotten used to it and we've shared the information in law enforcement. We are more compartmentalized in our responses, but we still have to show up with a proper amount of response. If you call and say this, your house is on fire. Right. And my wife is trapped in the fire. The fire department's coming. They're coming full force. Right. They can't until they have to. So we're stuck doing this. That's where swatting came from. SWAT team showing up for a no call. Right. And whether it's designed to embarrass law enforcement or it's designed to harass the people that the house was showing up to. But now we're seeing it done to politicians, right? Where they'll send email chains to politicians with terrible information in it. And then we have to spend hours and hours and hours, sometimes days, investigating, like that phone call I was just talking about, investigating that to make sure there's no immediate threat to the politicians, to make sure this really is not occurring. Or if it is, make an arrest. But usually look at it as a form of harassment.
Well, these days with the technology being the way it is, you probably know who did this, right? I mean,
you would think, but it's not that easy. First
really?
of all, yeah, I mean, let's just say an email chain, or an IP address. We know what IP address. We don't just go look at it. There's the Fourth Amendment or our Constitution. We don't just go dig into people's personal business. So we have to go get subpoenas to get that IP address. That's a lot of police work. What we found in some of these swatting calls to like school threats, bombs in your schools. Hilton, we had a couple last year.
Yeah.
Those are coming from Russia. There's nothing we can do about it. Really? Yeah, all this work, and we find out they're from Russia, and there's not much we can do about it. Yeah, but the threat was coming from Russia, and someone in Russia is doing it to bust our chops and harass us, or they're looking at the school book problem. The books in the schools that some people don't want these books in the school. If someone in Russia's, saying, there's a bomb in that school because of the books. And now we got this whole we got this whole law enforcement issue going on that's taking hours and hours of time out of everybody's day to validate that there's not really a bomb in Hilton High School based on some book complaints.
Oh my God, this is morphing. It used to be that you won the Nigerian lottery that you never applied for.
Yeah.
And it never gave a donation for it, right?
Yeah.
Now it's swatting.
Swatting.
So here's another one. I don't know if you're going to be able to comment on this or not. The status of this problem with immigration and people coming to Rochester and being housed. How much are you involved with that, if anything at all, or know about it?
Yeah, people, they're going to be surprised. I know nothing about it. I'm the lead law enforcement officer. We got tons of people coming to Rochester, New York, and I didn't know anything about it. Where they're going to land? What do they need? What's the services are going to be provided? Really, when you think about that, that's a federal immigration policy being driven down to a state, right? And then being driven down to a county. It's totally, I was going to swear backwards, right? This is federal immigration. This should be a federal problem.
Why would you need to know?
It's pushing down, but it ends up in your community and not even a phone call saying, hey, we got 40, 50 people that might need services or might need protection or who knows? Or maybe they're not vetted and there's a couple people in that community that might be criminals. No one tells us anything. They just show up and...
Oh, why would you need to know? After all.
No.
So that compels another question. So when somebody who is one of these people that are in the system, okay, when they do commit a crime, who handles that? What jurisdiction is that?
So say a person that's coming to Rochester through one of these immigration things that are occurring. And again, I'm not even commenting on why or what, right? But
threaten somebody or...
But if they commit a criminal act, they're still subject to our laws, right? So, if they go out and rob someone, we're still enforcing New York State law, New York State penal law on that.
Okay, but how does that dovetail with the immigration law? I mean, they get deported or not deported, or is there a criminal court for that? Or
it's a totally separate system. So we'd detain them, we'd apprehend them, we'd detain them, we'd put federal state charges on them. And in that situation, if they're here as an immigrant, federal prosecutors might get notified, or the federal immigration system might get notified. But again, that's how convoluted this whole thing is.
Okay, so the next place I want to go with that is that, so when you set bail on them, it's the same thing, same way that you set bail for everybody else is how much they can afford, which they can't afford anything.
Right. And under New York state law, we follow the law as we were talking about earlier. So if they can get out based on New York state law, they can get out. Now, it would take a federal judge to do something different, right? So if the federal judge wanted to remand, they would take it. There was this thing years ago where they would actually the federal government would come and put detainers on people. They were immigrants coming to our country one way or another. I'm not here to argue that. And they would come to the local jail and say, I'm putting a detainer on that. A detainer is not a judge's order.
What is it? What is it?
A detainer? It was like this immigration thing. They gave a piece of paper, and in the name of immigration, we're detaining this person in your jail. I had a real problem with it.
All right.
I had a serious problem. We don't just detain people in jails, right?
Without due process.
Without due process and without a judge saying, a court order. I remember during COVID, I was getting yelled at as the sheriff housing hundreds of people in the jail. Get people out of your jail. It's a killing field for people with COVID. It's a mass killing field. I'm like, folks, you don't understand civics. I don't detain people in the jail. I house them.
Right.
I do safety and security. If I had the ability to detain people in jail or the ability to get people out of the jail, there'd be a lot more people in the jail. You know what I'm saying? If you want to give a cop that authority to say who's in the jail, that's the people with the black robes detain that, do that stuff. So people are still confused in the whole system that we don't detain people on federal charges.
Right.
A judge does that, right? Right. So
I think a lot of people don't understand that a sheriff is responsible for the jails too. I mean, it's different than being a police chief in a metropolitan area.
Yeah, a whole different, and in Monroe County, we have a road patrol. Right. So you call 911 Henrietta or Mendon or Pittsford, you get a Monroe County Sheriff's deputy like any other police service. But then I have a whole jail. This morning we have almost 800 people detained in the jail. That's a huge responsibility. They're detained in the safety and security of the Monroe County Sheriff. The judge orders them detained to me, and then I house them and with the safety and security to make sure they don't escape, but also make sure they're safe when they're in jail.
Well, we're about ready to head into another news break, but we have a philosophical question when we come back. And are speed limits just a suggestion, or?
I look forward to answering that question. That's interesting.
Okay, right after this break. Well, you're back listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable, and we're having some education and some fun with our Monroe County Sheriff, Todd Baxter. And the philosophical question that I was posing before the break was speed limits.
Speed limits.
Speed limits. Philosophical question. How do you tell your kids that you're speeding over the speed limit and you're not supposed to break the law?
Well, first of all, you think about enforcement. I'm a realist, right? So if you think about yourself going down the New York State Thruway, there's 65-mile-an-hour speed limit, and no one goes 65, right? But we all know there's a trooper somewhere sneaking up on us or behind us or in front of us, right? So we all choose this number that in our mind or someone gave us.
You can get away
I get 6 over, I can get 11 over, right?
Yeah.
And your family might be 19 over, I don't know. But it's funny because that's an analogy of law enforcement itself. We don't prevent every crime. We just keep a lid on things, right? As law enforcement. And troopers do that well on the Thruway. No one goes 100 most often. Some do. But that's the idea, right? Just keep people in control. Keep us confined, right? Within reason, right?
And to hope the trooper doesn't have a bad day,
right? Because they will write you for 66 if they want to. Because the answer to your question is that's what I tell my kids: don't bitch if you get a ticket for 66 because the speed limit was 65, right? And you're breaking the law. There's nothing to complain about. You can't say, well, someone else went faster or there's a car in front of me going fast.
Right?
No, you committed the act of one over. And it's a violation of law. I can't help you.
Well, some of it's got to be discretion because it is illegal to spit on the sidewalk. I mean, you can't be arresting people for spitting on the sidewalk. I mean,
well, in the city of Rochester, I was a city cop for 22 years, and they're still on the law books about how you need to harness your horse or tie up your horse, right? It's still in the law books, believe it or not, in the city code about how you will harness your horse in the city of Rochester when you tie him up. Apparently, before you go to the saloon, I guess. But
Yeah, there's a story, a management story that I learned in college. There was a fellow that was supposed to be on the cliffs of Dover and warn people if Napoleon was coming across the channel, and the job was dissolved in 1955.
Nice.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
So
someone got paid for that.
Somebody got paid. Yeah. What do they call that? I forget that. Feather bedding or something like that. So one of the things about you is that you seem to work well in this as well as one can
Right.
in this political environment. I mean, you were a Republican, now you're a Democrat. First of all, I don't understand why a party is assigned to sheriffs or judges, because you're supposed to be completely neutral. I mean, obviously everybody has their own way of being brought up and your philosophy or whatever, but you're supposed to be totally neutral. Right. So one of the things that you have to deal with as a sheriff is deal in this political environment, and you seem to be doing it rather well, I would think.
It's not easy by any means. First of all, go back to I love the idea that the sheriff, the lead law enforcement officer in Monroe County or any county, is elected by the people. So I don't work for politicians, but I do have to go through a political process, and I agree with it. It should not be a party process, though, because then you're confined to different ideologies, or you're confined to, I need the money from this, or I need their endorsement, right? And that's where we start getting in trouble, because law enforcement should be apolitical. But even with that, I switched parties. I went from a Republican to a Democrat. But anybody knows Todd Baxter is going to say he's more conservative than he is liberal. And right. Nothing against my liberal friends. I love them. We chat all the time. I hang out with some. And so that's America, right? The fact is, so people say, well, you gave up so much to go to the Democratic Party. I'm like, I've worked with both parties. I'm not sure anybody's perfect. Let's just put that on the table, right?
Well,
there's
true.
not one that the party. So you're part of that party, so you're whole. I don't think so. We're all human beings. And the other part is, I don't give up anything. I don't give up my values. Right. To join a party, or, I don't get, and I'm very intent about that. I am Todd Baxter. If the Democrats want me, the Republicans want me, or both want me, I'm still going to be Todd Baxter. And I don't need this job as sheriff. I love it. I'm blessed. I am honored. I will do the best I can, but my life does not revolve around a title. So I'm not going to compromise anything for my title as sheriff. It's really quite simple.
Well, before the show, we were talking about the difference between management and leadership.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that, because I thought your comments about that were very relevant.
Yeah, and that's, you're building your team. You're thinking about the Buffalo Bills or another team, and diversity is a great thing, right? All these things. But at the end of the day, really, most people are either managers or leaders, right?
Right.
And me, I'm a leader. I'm a visionary. I got vision. I always push in the envelope forward. I'm never status quo. I'm never accepted to where we are. We're always going to improve ourselves. But I'm not a great manager. So that's why you got like Corey Brown. I bring Under Sheriff Brown with me because he's a great manager. He's a great numbers guy. He's not only loyal and dedicated, but he does the opposite of what I do. He's not a yes person. And some people are great managers. So then surround yourself with a great leader, right? Bring leadership with you that's visionary, so then you can implement all your policies. I almost look at it like sometimes like an Excel spreadsheet and a PowerPoint, right? I'm more PowerPoint, the bells and whistles and all, and someone's got to do the auto sum over here to make sure we got a budget to fulfill my vision. That's the beautiful part about leadership, is when you're smart enough, I guess, to surround yourself with people that are different than you. I know it sounds cliche and it's in leadership books. No. People write about this stuff, but that's what we got going on at the sheriff's office right now. My command staff are not yes people. My two lawyers I have working for me argue for a living. They argue with me for a living.
Yeah.
My undersheriff is not a yes person. He'll tell me any day of the week, 24 hours a day, if he thinks I'm screwing something up. He'll look me right in the eye and tell me, I don't think you're right. That's powerful stuff when it comes to leadership, because he's got that ability of trust also. And that's another thing that leaders don't. Stephen Covey, I mentioned him earlier, his 8th habit, he wrote a book of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. His 8th habit was trust. Trust is a force multiplier. If you got people around you trust that can tell you no, and they can trust you that you won't hold that against them, that's powerful stuff when it comes to leadership.
Well, my feeling has always been, if you have a culture rather than a solid process, you need the process too, but you need the culture. If people have a belief in what you're doing, no nonsense, with my car dealership, if they have a belief in what no nonsense means, then that permeates the rest of the actions that they have as far as the...
You nailed it. And sooner or later, they're going to have to make a decision without you available to help them guide that decision.
Absolutely.
And if they understand your culture,
absolutely,
they'll make a better decision. Not a perfect one.
Bingo. But
they'll make a much better decision because they understand. In the military, we call that commander's intent. All right, take that hill. The hill is the intent. But I'm going to form an operational plan how to take that hill, artillery rounds, infantry rounds, military intelligence. But sooner or later, the bad guys are going to screw up your plan. And if you know the intent, you'll still fulfill that intent. If you believe in the intent, you'll still fulfill that intent.
Right. It's different between the what and the why.
Right.
Why are you doing? Why are you doing this? And if you understand why you're doing that, then they don't have to look in the manual and find out, what the different permutations of response is supposed to be, right?
You're nailing it. And I love this. And the reason why leaders don't do that is because it's difficult. It's difficult to articulate the intent. It's easy to articulate an owner's manual, right? It's easy to look at the manual and say, you will do this, but it's hard to articulate sometimes the intent because you feel vulnerable when you're doing it.
Right, because it's emotion and a feeling,
Yeah.
and sometimes people can't comprehend that.
Yeah.
But if you're successful and people understand what your intent and your direction is, then the rest of it flows through that.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's a beautiful thing, but it's the art of leadership. Leadership is not a 2+2.
I'm with
leadership is an art. And it's got a lot of scar tissue that goes along with it. If you're a good leader, you've been burned multiple times, you've been cut up, you've been sliced and diced. Yeah. That's called the scar tissue. And that's right. Your best leaders have been cut up many times, including me. I've screwed it up more times than but hopefully you're learning from that each time and going, I won't do that again.
Right. And there's some people that are going to fail you.
Yeah.
And you have to get past that to the people.
And it hurts so bad.
I know.
It hurts so bad.
I know.
But that's human nature. And you know what? And I fail people all the time. I fail to make phone calls I should have made. I failed to look at a person in the eye when I was talking to them.
Oh, yeah.
I offended them with a vision I had.
Hey, in my religion, there was one person that was perfect. And
the rest of us,
they crucified him.
Right?
They crucified him.
Brother.
So you have no hope of everybody liking you and being loyal to you. So at that very theological and philosophical statement, I have to say, unfortunately, we have time to go because we're out of time. So
that's a good problem.
Delightful to have you here
always
again, and I'm always happy to hear your vision and wish you the best of luck. And we're going to have you on before the end of the year again, I'm sure.
Look forward to it. God bless, brother. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Next week, this time, same place, same time, the No Nonsense Roundtable.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every weekend from 10 to 11 on News Radio WHAM 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.